Hello and welcome to everyone waiting and those who are hopefully about to join. I'm Almost a Doctor, and it has been quite a while since I have done anything on this channel, but there is a good reason for that, but we'll get to that later. Most important thing is that I'll tell you what we're doing here. This is my contribution to the amazing marathon that Purple Rhymes with Orange is running for Christmas to make sure that everyone has somewhere to go and chat. And so I'm basically doing a stream over Christmas, and you can give me any questions you want, and hopefully I can answer at least a few of them. If you don't like the answer, I'm sorry, but I will do my best. Science questions are preferred, although you can technically ask whatever you want as long as YouTube doesn't ban you from the comments or one of the moderators does. But yes, greetings to those who are there. I can see that we have a couple of people I don't recognize, as well as some that I do, and Purple's in the chat, which is amazing. And so we got Jasper, Clunny, and Katina. Oh, who else? Liam, Stephane. Apologies if I mispronounce anything. I am terrible with this. We've got Atheist Carpenter. And so welcome to you guys. And hopefully we'll get going. Now, whilst I'm still waiting for everyone else to join, I may as well give a very brief channel update, if you can call it that, or at least an explanation for where I've been for the last few years, or at least since last year when I did this. I did my stream for the last one, and that is just, as the title suggests on this side here, I am almost a doctor, and this time the channel name is incredibly accurate. I have finally actually submitted my thesis, and I should have the results within a month. So by the end of January, I should know the outcome. So I'm either going to be perpetually almost a doctor, or that title will be, at least in the main regard, inaccurate, hopefully soon. And so the reason I haven't really done much on my channel is because the PhD got just a tiny bit difficult and crazy, and I needed the time. But anyway, this is a Christmas stream, so hence why I'm wearing the shirt. And I once, the same as last year, forgot about the fact that the green screen will get rid of the green in the shirt. So apologies if that bothers anyone. If not, though, at least the shirt is more appropriate to where I am, because Christmas Day was, 30 degrees Celsius plus. And so about, what's that? It's about 85 Fahrenheit, roughly. That's the one conversion I'm not really good at. And tomorrow is going to be 35 and 95, respectively. So yeah. Now, the way this is going to work is this is going to be Q&A. You can ask me any questions you want. Obviously, the purpose of this channel is to be scientific, so science questions are preferred. But in terms of what I classify as science questions, I'm very loose. And as I said, I will answer pretty much any science question that is asked. My question might just be, I don't know, or, but still, hopefully I can give you a nice answer. So for those who've joined, I can say, Godless Scummer, thanks for joining as well. Debbie, I'm not sure if I said hello. And yeah, so welcome for joining. And yeah, I'm just filling a bit of time while we get everyone over from the previous stream. We got 20 people watching. This is pretty good. And now, Yes, I can see questions. Sorry, I just want to explain how it's going to work. If you want to ask me a question, my channel's not monetized, so you can't do super chats. But just at my channel name, have the question. I would ask that if you're not asking a question, try and limit using that. Just makes it easier to spot, but there's not too many people so far, so it should be easy. So yeah, ask any questions you want, and I'll go through and answer as many of them as I can. Now, the first one we've got there is, what is your field of studies? Study. It's 2 degrees Celsius here. So, Stephanie, thanks for that. Let me, just because it has been a while, I am going to do my best. So there we go. I can bring up questions. And okay, so where is here? I'm assuming Northern Hemisphere, maybe the Americas. Anyway, my field of study, though, is physics. And I'll remove that because I realized it was hiding the bottom of my face. Is physics. My PhD, the thesis I just submitted, was actually in integrated optics or integrated photonics, which I'll explain in a moment. I essentially play with lasers for a living and try and make gas detectors, but miniature ones that still have very high accuracy. Because the issue is that for trace greenhouse gases, which are contributing to, obviously, climate change, a lot of them we don't actually know how much there is, or how much we're releasing from certain activities, and it looks like we're actually releasing a lot more. For methane for example, which is one that I did focus on for my thesis, we're probably emitting twice as much as we thought we were, which is not good. But if you want to map these things, you need lightweight portable detectors, and so my work was kind of on that. And integrated photonics was the way we did that. And integrated photonics, the name integrate just means you try and put stuff in the optics. So essentially, where you might have to do things processing on a computer, you can imagine running software to do certain activities. Well, now we can actually try and get some of that done in optics. So basically, optical computers in a very loose sense, though it is a lot more complicated than that. And yes, I will actually make a video in not too distant future on what my PhD was. I'm just waiting it to be accepted, because once it goes to the library copy, then it's publicly available, and I can tell everyone about what's in it, and then people can go away and have a look at it if they, for some crazy and mentally insane reason, that they actually want to go read my thesis. I'm pretty sure once it's submitted, the only parts I'll read will be the acknowledgements, which I'll add in. But anyway, that's a different one. And I am also keeping an eye on the chat. We got a few more. Hey, Claire, haven't seen you for a while. By the way, if I don't say hi to anyone, I miss you. And Godless Scummer, I can't remember if I said hi. But yeah, if I miss you, just at me, have a go at me. It'll be fine. Okay, so we have another question here. At Dr. Matt, or almost a doctor, hopefully. Although once I become a doctor, I probably won't want people using the title, but at least not that often. That's anyway, separately. And do you think cows are the main reason for climate change, like they think in the US? Now, the answer with anything to do with, say, climate change, and note, I'm not a meteorologist, I'm a physicist whose applications were in there, but I have spent a fair bit of time looking at it. The answer is it's actually very complicated, and there's a lot of activities that are contributing, and it's not. And so saying, so having a main reason is sometimes a bit misleading, because no one thing takes precedent. Energy generation, I think, is still the largest contributor, particularly coal-fired plants. In terms of methane alone, agriculture, I will actually double check, but I'm pretty sure agriculture is not the first one. If you tally up the contribution of every gas, CO2 being number one, methane being second, although methane has the potential to become number one if we're not careful. And well, actually, we should reduce all of them, but still, it'll become number one because we're releasing more and more of it, not because we reduce CO2 at the rate we're going. Cows alone aren't, although within agriculture they are they are one of the largest ones. And I will say, let's have a look. And yeah, agriculture is still the second largest one in total, with electricity and heat production being number one, as I thought. And then within agriculture, you've got cows as one part of it. And it's depending on which stat you're looking at, because one of the issues I mentioned with, say, methane is we don't actually know how much we're releasing. Or at least not accurately, because most of the reason we know about these things is because they're theoretical estimations based on very idealistic scenarios. And so now that we have the technology to map some of these activities, because it's very, very hard to monitor an entire farm or waste processing plant or landfill. You imagine monitoring the entire site and everything that's coming off it. It's difficult to do, though. As technology improves, like some of the things that were in my thesis, and other things like LiDAR, and also just better modeling, we are getting a better idea of what's happening. And as I said, it's not looking great. But anyway, actually, let's see another question. I'm actually not sure about that one. I'll have to look this one up. So yeah, if I get a moment, I will. But since I'm on my own, I will have to pause this one for a while. As I said, I will do a nice video about my PhD, and one of the things about it is, did I end up developing a glorified fart detector if you're talking about things like the bovine methane? And the answer is no, because most of the methane they release is actually through their mouths, not the other end. Yeah, call that a technicality, but oh well. Okay. Also, I do need to correct that this statement is not correct. Not yet. In fact, almost a doctor is still probably the most correct it's been since I started this channel. So, but yes, within a month or so, it'll be more than a month by the time everything gets conferred, but in a relatively short period when you're talking about these things, hopefully, yes, you're right. It will be wrong. Also, if I miss anyone's questions, please feel free to send them again, particularly if we have quite a few people in the chat. And as I said, also, if I said this in the previous stream where most people are coming from, but if you're joining this one, you can actually join me in the stream. I don't mind, just as long as either I or someone else in the community that we know knows who you are, just because I can't let anyone on for obvious reasons. But if I know you, it's easy. Or if someone else I know knows you, I think Purple will join in a bit, but we will see how that goes. So yeah, other questions? I know we are talking. Although actually, I was going to ask for more questions though while I'm doing that. This is kind of a running physics joke for anyone who wasn't aware, but physicists like to simplify their models where possible. And the thing that physicists like to do with cows is model them as perfect spheres centered at the origin, just to make the maths a lot easier. So yeah, spherical cows. And I definitely need to, I could make a video on that. But yes. All right, we do have, here's another one. Almost a doctor. Which sci-fi franchise has the most realistic lasers? That's a good question. Any franchise that has lasers as a weapon, for anything other than hitting, like destroying incoming projectiles, or as guidance or like rangefinder, so basically data acquisition, has got them wrong. If you're going to do any damage with a laser, you tend to do like a laser cutter. And if you ever look at a laser cutter, there is a reason it's very damn close to whatever it's cutting. And that's because lasers are inherently insanely inefficient. Using them as a weapon is just not a very good thing. In terms of modern military, the main place that you tend to see them is for things like stopping incoming missiles by basically targeting the missile and trying to blow it up before it reaches you, because a laser at least you can get it to what you're aiming at with the speed of light, so it's useful, and so it's easy to intercept things. Or for other things like blinding drones. That's another one. But yeah, so I'm thinking of some of the main ones. Star Wars doesn't even call them lasers, although what they have in there are clearly not even lasers. Star Trek actually, they do make references to lasers being obsolete weapons that had before the phases they use. But again, they tend to just be like low power phases. So again, inaccurate. I am trying to think of which ones have it. You'd probably have to go with a movie that was trying to be scientifically accurate, like The Martian or Interstellar. But in terms of franchise, oh well. But anyway, I now have Purple on as a guest. So, hello, Purple. How are you going? You there?
Hello.
Hey. How's the marathon going so far? For the bits of it that I have,
pretty well. I mean, every year we always run into problems. A few people for technical issues or whatever, can't start the stream when they were scheduled. But when it's happened, there have been people already just step in, and fill in the time. So even one that happened while I was napping.
You don't have a stream unless you've had technical difficulties.
Yep.
Pretty much every time you meet someone online, there has to be at least one audio issue, potentially more issues. I don't think I've ever had one where something hasn't gone wrong. So fingers crossed we don't have anything major on this one. But yeah.
Yeah, and for this, for this whole marathon, we've got about 30 different channels.
I know. I was having a look at the list. It's every year. I think it's grown, at least since I started.
Yeah, we get more new people every year.
Yeah, the issue you were having this year was actually fitting everyone in. A lot of volunteers, which is a testament to how good the idea is and all the effort you've put in over the years. So yeah,
I was having to ask a lot of people if they would cut back to just an hour to make room for somebody else.
Yeah, and that I originally had also cut back, but then had to rearrange things, so I got my 2 hours again. So,
well, there was supposed to be another person coming on after you, but then it turned out that they weren't going to be able to do it. So that's why I had scheduled you for just 1 hour before, but then we lost someone. So at this hour, it's hard to get anybody in North America to do it.
Oh, I wonder why.
Yeah. Well, it's 1 a.m. my local time.
Yes, and I take it that pretty much everyone here is not a flat earther and actually believes in time zones. So I think, yes, that's perfectly understandable. Yes. Also, I'm also trying to keep an eye on the chat too. So I am seeing someone, because I do want to come back to this one before it disappears. If you don't mind me changing the topic for a second. I only remember the James Bond movie, a laser replaces the saw blade as it inches closer to Connery's inseam. Yes, that's Goldfinger, if I remember correctly, with all the lovely named lady in there, which I won't repeat because YouTube will probably have an issue with that. Some of those old Bond films are crazy. Yeah. If you want a good Bond film where they get the lasers pretty wrong, and also just get physics pretty wrong, Moonraker. But yeah, this one, Goldfinger, they have the laser there, but that's one of the closer to accurate ones because they essentially just using it as a glorified laser cutter.
Yeah.
The inaccuracy there is that they've actually got the laser very far away, whereas I mentioned earlier, you have the laser cutters
closer.
It's
hanging from the ceiling, so it's like 6 or 7 feet away.
Yeah. But you got to give a little bit of creative license, and I don't mind if because that's at least closer, and it's moving slowly and cutting, and you're not, several kilometers away, or several AU, so several Earth orbits away from your target, and still hitting it with a laser. So, because that's the other thing that lasers diverge. Like the actual beam will get wider as it goes on. All light will essentially spread out. That's known as diffraction, and people are probably most familiar with that. Let's say like a double slit, with the double slit experiment being one of the most famous examples of it. But pretty much all light will diffract to at some
Well,
point. It will diffract.
Yeah.
But lasers will get wider. So if you're aiming at a target that's far away, your beam is not as tight as when you actually first let it go. So if you're trying to direct energy, it's actually not that good for long distances. This is why you are better off just flicking some solid objects at them, missiles or something. A lot better. But yeah, that is actually, so James Bond doesn't get them too bad, as I said, if we ignore Moonraker and the other times where they don't.
I've got a question for you that it's a science-related thing. It's somewhat on policy. For the safety of the general public, should nuclear families be required to live in lead-lined houses?
I like that one. Well, I don't think they should, because modern nuclear reactors are generally very safe. What we need to do is make sure every nuclear family has a giant swimming pool that they can stay in, because you can swim atop the cross of a nuclear waste pool without really any side effects, because the radiation won't generally reach you, assuming it's done properly, that is. So what I think we need is water. Nice big pool in the living room. But yeah, I do like that one.
And now Tsunami's threatening to behave. That takes all the fun out of it.
Did I miss a question, though? Did I miss a question?
Well, I think you missed her asking who he married.
Oh, okay. I mean, that is a question. I've kind of explained who I am, but in case you missed it at the beginning, I am almost a PhD doctor in physics, and no, it's the answer to that one. But yeah, thinking else. Oh, by the way, I am going to wait a bit in case there are more people going to join. I do actually have a few Christmas themed / history trivia and science questions lined up. Only a few of them. I'm not going to keep score, but I'm going to keep those for a little bit, just as I said, so everyone can sort of settle in and can answer a few questions first.
Well, and if I could rephrase one of Tsunami's questions there.
Go for it.
Again, about lasers, that could a orbiting space laser actually be starting the California wildfires?
Of course not. This is as I said, it's that beam divergence. You're not starting a fire with anything that we can put into orbit at the moment, because you can't put anything big enough. Though that does come back to an interesting idea that the US had to actually put things into orbit that would, if they didn't quite have that sort of capability, they had pretty crazy capabilities. And that was the Star Wars project under Reagan, which obviously was known as the Space Defense Initiative.
Yeah, I remember that. The concept would be sound, to target a missile while it's flying.
At short distances, yes. At the distances they were thinking of and the energy you would need, no.
Yeah,
and
I think that's the problem you would run into with using it as a weapon on a spaceship too, is just the power generation that would be required for it.
Yeah, and that's one of the big issues. And because that program actually had a few ideas with lasers. They had the idea to have ground-based lasers that they would reflect off satellites, so with basically reflective dishes on them, and they would direct that towards a target. So you would have at least the energy generation / storage on the ground, as well as the laser itself, which is slightly practical, though still not. And then you have the you also had ones where they wanted to put chemical lasers in space for that, which again has the issue of these ranges. It's just not a practical approach. And the other one, which was the second video I ever made for my channel, and I think it's now in second place. It used to be first, used to be the most watched video, which I hated because it was the second one I did, and it obviously sucked. And I look back at it going, oh, well, at least I've learned a few things. And that was on Project Excalibur, where they attempted to build a nuke-powered like a nuclear bomb-powered space X-ray laser, which does sound like it's out of one of those sci-fi films, but wasn't. And it turns out they couldn't actually focus the laser, amongst other issues about putting nukes in space. But that was one of the bigger issues they had in terms of the science of the actual. It was meant to be more of a defensive device than a weapon to target incoming missiles. So Russia would launch a bunch of nukes. You set one of these off and target 50 of them at the same time. But they couldn't focus the actual beam because turns out X-rays, not easy to focus, which if you'd asked any physicist, they probably could have told you that. But apparently there were ones working on it. They did do underground tests. So yeah, they're like, how do we get enough energy to power a giant X-ray laser? And somebody thought, what about a giant bomb? They were like, yes, let's try it. Yeah. You can go watch that video, or if you are patient, I will eventually remake that video. See if I can do a better job of it. Hopefully I can. But yes. All right. We have... Sorry, I'm just also going back through the chat.
Yeah, see if there's questions from the chat.
Do Aussies blush? Yes. I'm just going through. I might also be scrolling back up. I can't see too many. As I said, it does make it easy. If you want to just like at my channel name, it does make it easier to spot. And some of you, though, are already doing that.
Has one there.
Yep. I'm a big fan of BBC's Infinite Monkey Cage. What are some of your favorite science podcasts / shows? Oh, that's a good one. It tends to vary based on what mood I'm in. One of the ones I have been watching again, because I tend to go through breaks, PBS Eons. Some of the PBS stuff I don't tend to watch. Like I don't watch their physics or space stuff because it tends to be what I do for a living and it's just not my style. But their Eons one I really like. So that's paleontology. And I've been going through a few paleontology videos because I just find that interesting. Again, I don't tend to watch many physics or chemistry related things like this because it's close to what I do for work, if you can call PhD work. I mean, it is work of some sense, just not a living.
Well, it's been a hot year for paleontology. They, on average, have identified a new species of dinosaur about every week.
Yes, which is not actually too unusual in terms of identifying lots. But yeah, this year they found quite a few, and they've also found out new things about dinosaurs we thought we knew a lot about. So if you look at, say, like T-Rex, T-Rex has got a few overhauls. I mean, there is out there debate in the scientific community about whether T-Rex had lips.
Yeah.
Every bit of paleontology is debated. I love it because that's how science goes, and it doesn't matter what area you go to. Astronomy is also, like astrophysics, can be similar to some degree because you are looking at things very far away with very limited information. So the joke amongst most astronomers is if you get within the same order of magnitude as the real answer, you've got it right. So yeah, within an order of magnitude is the acceptable bar, which factor of 10. But that's also more of a comment on just the nature of what you're doing. I'm trying to think if there's one of the paleontology finds from this year that stands out. Oh, they did find, I can't remember if it's this year or published this year, but it was fairly recent. They found a ceratopsian that was not bilaterally symmetric. Its frill was asymmetric.
I must have missed that one, especially a ceratopsian I should have paid attention to. It was
I think Loki ceratops or something like that. It was named after Loki because of this helmet with the big horns on it, and it was basically it's somewhat closely related to the Triceratops, but the frill, the top of it had a basically one of the spurs coming off the frill was actually asymmetric going over one way, which hadn't been seen, at least not to that degree before. I thought that one was interesting. And then, of course, Megalodon size changed again, but then again, it's always changing size. And it probably wouldn't have looked like a Great White. Although talking about bad movies, sorry, let me. I just realized the comment's still up. Have you ever watched Meg?
No, I never saw that one.
Yeah, I watched the second one recently, and I did not watch it as a scientific movie. I watched it because I didn't want to think, and I actually enjoyed it for that. It was actually a fun movie to watch, but my God, the science was terrible.
I sometimes like to watch, science fiction or horror movies just for that, just for taking apart all the reasons this creature could not exist.
Yeah, and I mean, The Core is a good example of a science fiction film where the science is absolutely terrible, but it's still a fun movie to watch. And that's what I mean. We did. It's the most popular live stream on this channel was one where a few of us went through the inaccuracies with The Core, and yes, I will organise to do a few streams on that in the upcoming future. As I said, I've been trying to submit my PhD, so we'll see where that goes to. And but yeah, I was watching that, and what the opening scene. I won't say anymore because I don't want to ruin the plot. Although, what plot is probably the better question to ask. The second Meg, they have these tiny little amphibian things with really sharp teeth that are very bitey, running away from a T-Rex, and then the T-Rex gets eaten by a megalodon. There is at least 40 million years difference between a T-Rex and a megalodon. Megalodon lived closer to us than it did T-Rex. So unless you've got time traveling in this movie as well, though, given all the other inaccuracies they have, why not add one more? And those little snappy amphibian creatures, the closest I can think of to what they're meant to be is a Temnospondyl, sort of a violent what's the famous one in, I think, Pulasuchus out of Walking with Dinosaurs? It's getting a bit old, but it's they were giant amphibians that acted like crocodiles. And again, you're going back 100 or so million years for them. The last one's died out, I think, about 130 million years. So I don't remember the exact number on that one. But again, so you're looking at about 100 million years difference between them and Meg. But apparently they live next to each other in this one. Sorry, that scene was like, I don't know. But as I said, you don't watch it scientifically, which is, no, I didn't, because in terms of this comment, I didn't want to have an aneurysm. I wanted to actually have some brain function out the other end of it, so I couldn't. There are a few other questions which I'll go through. Let's see if I can go in order. Again, if I missed them, repost them. I do apologize. I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat. Latest music you listen to at the moment? I've been listening to Christmas music. My favorite picks for that either Sia's Christmas album or Pentatonics. I will welcome disrespectful disagreement about best Christmas music in the comments and in the chat, just to get some engagement. But yeah, Purple, have you been listening to Christmas music?
Not too much of it, but apart from when I'm driving, I really don't listen to music too often.
Yeah, I mean, I tend not to do it if I'm working or anything. It's more to drown out other sounds. Though, sometimes there are brief windows where I do enjoy a bit of it. Although there was a weird thing that helped me get through my PhD was sea shanties. When you're down in the lab and it's 9 p.m. because the thing hasn't been working all day and you're still going, uplifting sea shanties are an amazing way to keep working.
Those were quite popular for a while there, and actually, I do have one of those on my common playlist.
Which one?
Well, it's a sea shanty done by a group I had never heard of before, and it's just about how much they love hard cider.
That doesn't sound familiar. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I think it may be an original by this group on YouTube.
Okay, I'll definitely be looking that one up. That sounds cool.
Here, you can go on to another question, and I can pull a link up for it.
Sure. All right. Okay, so another one. How do you get paid to go to school? spend an inordinate amount of time at uni and then do a PhD. And hope that if you're in America, you'll get a wage to do a PhD. And if it's about 40K with huge margins on that number because it depends where in the UK, sorry, not the UK, the US you do it. However, if you do it anywhere else, like the UK, like Australia, you tend to get a scholarship, which is also time limited. So, and they call it a scholarship. You don't pay tax on it, but it also means they can pay you the equivalent of or below minimum wage. So you technically get paid to go to school to do full time, or sometimes more than that, hours and get paid nothing for it. So that's one way. You're not going to come out. You can't financially win to go to school unless you're the teacher. Although I did get to do a bit of a fair bit of teaching throughout PhD, which was fun. But I'm not sure if that's me going to school or me actually helping to run the school. But oh well, that'd be my answer. Yes, I will take stupid questions seriously sometimes. I love that. No, sorry, done that one. I'm just going through. I think we're up to date with most of the questions.
Okay. There's the link to the.
I will definitely be going and listening to that after. After all the streams are done, because I can actually probably hang around until you wrap up. So is there? I can't remember. Is there anyone in between me and your wrap up, Purple?
Yeah, after you, Mage is going to be on his gardening channel to talk about.
That's right. Yes, Gardens Happen, isn't it?
Yes.
There we go. Yeah. No, I'll probably have to take a brief break in between my stream and the next, but I'll come back and join with in the chat. But yeah, no, I'll be around for the end because time zones here are slightly more friendly to that. But yes, I can see a few people putting their choices or their song choices down. But yes, scientific questions too. I'm trying to think of what some of the biggest scientific finds were this year, but my brain is drawing a blank because I'm thinking about too many things at the same time.
Well, there was a rather interesting discovery of an Allosaurus that is just one of those things, that strikes you funny as guys getting hit in the nuts always seems funny. So they found an Allosaurus with damage to the pelvic bone, indicating that a Stegosaurus had got him right in the crotch with the Thagomizer.
Oh, yes. I remember that one. For anyone who doesn't know what an Allosaurus is, it's basically an earlier cousin of T-Rex. Not super closely related, but close enough. They're all in that massive theropod clade. And the Stegosaurus fakey Thagomizer, which is an awesome word. I love the word Thagomizer. It's brilliant.
I love that actually came from a cartoon, and it is now part of the official vocabulary by the professionals.
Yeah. But then again, Taser is from a cartoon. Or a comic strip. Thomas Anderson's Super Electric Rifle, if I've got it right. But yeah. Oh, yeah, but... Yeah, poor Thag. I like that. But the thing is, when you say the word Thagomizer, that's exactly what I envisage, is a weapon like that. It's just brilliant. So, it works, but yeah, poor Thag. Yeah, I mean, science, there's a lot of dinosaurs with strange names. There was the one earlier that was named after Loki, and it's one of the more reasonable ones. You've got one that's named after Hogwarts, because it looks a bit like a dragon. And there's, although I think from what I can understand, or at least what I've seen, Tyrannosaurus scientists tend to be the better namers. They tend to have cooler names for a Tyrannosaur. But yeah, no, the poor Allosaurus.
Well, some of them are just lazy names.
Oh yeah, they're just like this place lizard, or Saurus, I think now is generally accepted to be reptile, because that would include dinosaurs and birds, because birds are dinosaurs. And whereas when they first used it, it meant lizard, but dinosaurs are not lizards.
Yeah, but
So-
like they found a new sauropod with a really long neck, which is kind of a feature of the clade that all sauropods have the long neck. And they named it Giraffatitan.
Yes,
that's just lazy. You can be more creative than that.
Oh, yes, but here's the thing. Giraffes actually have relatively short necks. And it's a crazy thing because, yes, whilst they might look long, they're actually not long enough for them to reach the ground. They have to actually spread their legs out to have a drink. So their neck is actually disproportionately short compared to the rest of their body, which is really weird when you think about it. And I haven't been able to get that fact out of my head.
It really is weird that they have to be in such a vulnerable position just to drink water.
But those necks have nothing to do with, or have very little to do with feeding. It was all sexual selection. And they did actually I think it was in the last few years, maybe a bit ago, did find actually some intermediate fossils that showed other ways that they were competing, where they basically smack their heads and necks against each other, which is where the long necks come from. But yes. Also, so another question: what did you have for Christmas dinner, and was it cooked with lasers? Unfortunately, I didn't have Christmas dinner because I tried to cook it with a laser that was the equivalent of the NIS, the National Ignition. NIF, National Ignition Facility, which is the giant lasers they're trying to use for fusion, and there wasn't anything left. I don't do anything by halves. As I said, lasers are inefficient. You need a big laser to cook something. Although I guess you could use a maser, microwave laser. Well, so the term laser means light amplification by the stimulated emission of radiation. So a maser is just a microwave amplification. And masers came first. The first lasers were known as optical masers until someone realized they could switch that first letter. So there are Zasers, so X-ray lasers. We do now have gamma ray lasers.
Okay, well, what about a laser being used more like a crock pot that, you just have it over a pot of food and you can't get a lot of power out of it, so you just leave it on there for 6 to 10 hours.
Oh, and you kind of like just insulate the container so all the energy from the laser's been pumped in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could work. As I said, you're probably better off doing that with a maser. Maybe you can do a microwave laser. That would still technically be what most people would expect. And there are infrared lasers as well. The only lasers that I ever used for my PhD that were in the optical region were the ones for alignment. So you can actually see them. But everything I did was in the infrared. At various wavelengths, but normally in the mid-infrared. 1550 is a common, 1550 nanometers, 1.5 microns is common for a lot of things because a lot of your fiber optics will operate at that wavelength. So companies are already making lasers in that range. So yeah, you could take something maybe a bit longer than that, go all the way into the thermal and heat it up. Although you might need a quantum cascade laser for that. It depends what you're targeting. But yeah, you could do it. Now I'm just thinking of a crock pot with this giant array of electricals coming off the top of it to run a laser that is unnecessarily bulky for no reason other than it looks cool. No, well, I mean, just power the laser with a nuclear bomb. That'll work. It would get enough energy.
Okay, how powerful a laser would you need to take out a zombie?
A zombie? Depends on the zombie. To take one out, it would need to be insanely powerful. I think to the point where it will be much more efficient to just take a smaller laser and throw it really hard at the zombie. That's honestly, in a zombie apocalypse, I'd be throwing the lasers at them, not using them. You could blind them. Although they're zombies, so that might not work. Wonder do you ever go to zombie apocalypse weapon? I think mine would just be to start it, so I'm no longer in the movie.
Actually, I had some years back when everybody was doing their zombie apocalypse plans, I had done mine up, and part of my plans were to get to go and get a couple of the skip loaders, which would probably be left lying around at the rental places, and just fit those out with some armor to basically make them very agile mini tanks.
Hmm.
And I actually had an idea even for an air pressured rifle sort of thing, to sit on the top of them that would shoot large BBs. Shoot the large steel bearings.
That'd hurt, and because it's compressed air, you won't run out of propellant.
Yeah, well, mostly I was thinking about, I'm less worried about the zombies than I am about other people. So I was thinking about if somebody's trying to chase you, a weapon that could take out a car.
Okay. Yeah, although that's one thing I notice in a lot of these zombie movies is that all the people tend to run and go independent, but humans are social creatures. We are good at solving our problems, but only once they become big problems. So
Yeah.
you'd probably lose a few big cities, and then humans would go, wait a minute. And they would probably do all right because, I mean, I think I would rather face off against a zombie that can't use a rifle than, say, go back to somewhere like World War II when a particular toothbrush moustache Austrian failed painter tried to take over the world, and have people who also have tanks again and vehicles that you need to take out.
The problem is, how do you determine who you can trust to let into your encampment?
Well, I guess it depends on the circumstance. But sorry, I do want to go back because I did like this one. I need to do a video on some of the stupid science ideas out there. But yeah, it reminds me of the guy who calculated how long it would take to cook a chicken by slapping it. If you haven't already, anyone who's watching this, go look up the Ig Nobel Prizes. They are hilarious. You've got ones where the people tried to calculate. People who demonstrated that roller coasters are good for removing or can help the passing of kidney stones. You've got papers on colonoscopy in the sitting position or self-colonoscopy, which, if you know what a colonoscopy is, they'll figure out what that paper was probably about. There's a whole bunch of them. It's like that. I did actually make a video. I never quite finished or published it, where I was trying to calculate how much energy would it take to send a pimple on your face into orbit. And basically, if you got the person up into orbit, the amount of energy you'd need to keep it there would be the equivalent of hitting the person on the side of the head with a sledgehammer to launch just the pimple. So yeah, people have done weird calculations.
Okay.
Hey, the scientists get bored too.
How about the other way around? What if you're like up in the International Space Station where you've got minimal gravity and you pop a pimple? Could that create enough thrust to actually get you to move through the room?
Technically, it would move you, because if you ignore air resistance, which would be, fairly minimal in this, it's more the other things you'd bump into. If you're in the vacuum of space, if you do anything that launches any solid object the other direction, laws of momentum, you will move. Would it get you to the other end of the spacecraft before air resistance stops you? I don't know. I don't know what the calculations are, although assuming how long it'd probably take you anyway, you'd probably have another pimple by then you can pop, but it would move you. But also the reason you have apparent zero gravity is also because you're in free fall, so you're already moving. You've got a lot of energy. Another question. Almost a Doctor, do you recall NASA's Project Orion proposed nuclear pulse propulsion system for spacecraft? Yeah, I do recall it. I've got a video on it. I thought it was hilarious. I had to make a video on it. Basically, the idea for Project Orion was, could you make a spaceship powered by nuclear bombs? essentially by dropping the bombs out behind the spaceship and having a giant shield that the impact would push on. And the answer the answer they came to was yes, you could actually do it, but you'd probably cause eye burn and severe radiation damage to everybody in the launch path. And so their idea was to maybe not go that hard, but to actually step down the amount of nukes and just use conventional explosives till you get out of Earth's atmosphere, then use the nukes. But even Freeman Dyson, so Dyson Sphere fame, calculated you could use such a craft to get to our nearest star, nearest star system at Alpha Centauri, within 100 years, which compared to currently available craft is actually decent.
Yeah.
Be a generation ship, you could do it. And they did do tests on a small scale. Like this project was taken pretty seriously. And I actually found video footage of them like having explosives go off behind this. You can actually see these things move. And they said you basically oil those shields behind it and they last a lot longer than you'd expect. And so there's that. And yeah, that was an interesting one. I actually probably should do like a compilation, like a montage video and all the crazy ideas of what people wanted to do with nukes. You've got nuke-powered nukes with unshielded rocket engines, like unshielded nuclear-powered rocket engines. You've got people wanting to dig extra Suez Canal with nukes. You've got a time where people thought that you could they thought it might be a good idea to generate electricity by making your own geothermal heat using nuclear bombs. There was, Project Excalibur, Project Orion, which we've mentioned. There's there's a whole bunch of other ones. There was the successful time where the Soviet Union stopped a massive fire, and I think it was a sinkhole, like detonating a mini nuke, because of course, only in the Soviet Union. And yeah, there's a lot of really weird ideas. There was the time people had was it radium? Was the paper they used, and you're meant to irradiate a certain part of the male anatomy at night for vitality. Yeah. Some people have had crazy ideas with nukes or nuclear radiation, nuclear stuff. Some of it's crazy. I do find it funny. We've got another one. Does everybody date each other in the lab? No, my lab doesn't do carbon dating.
So you can only date silicon life forms?
We don't do any radioactive dating. I imagine some parts of the university would, but I'm in optics. We don't do that. And although one of the things you have to do with carbon dating is calibrate it. So I think they are getting more accurate. But yeah. Also, I'm noticing someone's also put up radium toothpaste as an item for the previous point, which, that wasn't the only one. There was radium for basically everything when it was first discovered. And yeah, they went crazy with it until people started dying. There's a famous golfer who took radium tablets for his vitality every day and ended up dying of cancer after his jaw fell off. So, and that was when people went, maybe we shouldn't consume or put radioactive materials on or in us this much.
Yeah, anybody who is interested in it, do a Google search on the Radium Girls.
Oh, that was just exploitation.
Yeah, these were the women who were hand painting the numbers and the hands for watches with radium so they would glow in the dark. And they were even telling them that they would get a cleaner lines if they licked the brush in between numbers. So they were actually telling them to lick the radium. And yeah, there was a surprising number of women who got mouth cancers and had teeth falling out.
Oh, and in some cases, the entire jaw would essentially fall off and disintegrate. while you were still alive. These Fossey Jaw, I believe it is. I could be wrong. And essentially what the company that was hiring them did is the moment they showed any symptoms, they fired them. So they didn't. So no one else in the workplace actually saw it develop, and they basically covered it up. It was pretty horrible the way they were treated. And they weren't being paid much either.
Yep.
Even for the time, it's pretty bad. Oh well.
I was reminded of another channel here that you might find interesting. I'm putting it in there now. Isaac Arthur is a writer who does science fiction, and he's got a lot of videos that are like, hour-long videos analyzing the, how realistic the potential is of building various types of spacecraft and space habitats.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to give that a go because I've always found that interesting, and I like to veer towards that sort of. I like going through movies, and my dad loves it because I'll do it with him, but my siblings hate it when I go watching movies with me because I will talk about these things all the way through, but like, you can't do that, or oh, that's a good idea. Oh well. But yeah, no, I'll give that one a look. So it looks like I've got a bit of homework to do after this video, but fun homework. Yeah, well.
If you want a truly horrible dinosaur sci-fi movie, this was one that I'm pretty sure was made for the Sci-Fi Channel back when they were doing things like Sharknado. There's one called Jurassic Attack, which the premise of the movie is that that this museum had the remains of some Native Americans and things like that. That this Native American was protesting and wanted them returned to his tribe. And since the museum refused, he broke into the museum late at night and did what looked like some kind of pagan ritual that actually brought the skeletons of 3 dinosaurs back to life. They didn't have flesh on them or anything. It was just the glowing skeletons walking around and busting up the town.
At least then you can't have a go at them for getting the color and the. I guess because most of them don't put feathers on dinosaurs that should have had them, so you can't have a go at them for that. Yeah. Oh no, my favorite of those, I haven't actually watched it, but I should because the premise just sounds amazing. Is one called Velocipasta, where it's basically a pastor who has the power, who ends up with the powers to turn into a velociraptor, and he has to go and save a prostitute. And I'm just like, I've seen the cover for it. I'm just like, at some point I have to watch that. That just sounds like the best terrible movie.
I've heard about that one too, and I feel I do need to see it at some point. I've seen clips of it.
Oh, that's another thing. That one. That was I can't even remember what I was thinking before that. But yeah, I'm still waiting for raptors in movies to get their feathers because they should.
Yeah. Well, in Jurassic Park, they weren't aware that they had them when the first one was made.
When the first one was made, yes. And so the first of the Jurassic Parks is not too bad, actually, in their depiction of the dinosaurs. There's a few things they took liberties with.
Yeah.
But in terms of the dinosaurs they modeled theirs off, at the time, they weren't too bad. At least as far as movies went. They actually did a better job than some.
Yeah. Aside from the size of the raptors.
It depends on which one they actually are. That's a whole thing that you could do an entire video on, actually, because they're not velociraptors, but they went with that name because they thought people would recognize it.
Yeah.
Though I think but then again, they've always had an issue with size. The first of the Jurassic Worlds had a giant mosasaur that was twice as big as the largest possible mosasaur we've ever found. So, yeah. That's yeah. Although I mean, as I said, I don't mind watching bad movies, but if you're with me, you're going to hear about the bad sides. But yeah, I'm still there are a few movies because the other thing I do is I like my history as well. So if I'm watching like World War II, I watched one called Greyhound recently. I'd been meaning to watch that for a while because I'm very fascinated by the war in the Atlantic, particularly the submarine and then the anti-submarine technology that they had and the tactics. And it's probably one of the best movies I've ever seen in terms of depicting accurately, for the most part, of how the war in the Atlantic was fought.
What was the title?
Greyhound. It's with Tom Hanks, and it's essentially he's the captain of a destroyer, and they're trying to get a convoy through what was known as the Black Gap, because one of the best protections any of the ships, the Allied ships, had from submarines was air cover, because planes were probably a submarine's worst nightmare in World War II, because they could reach you before you dived if you didn't spot them in time, and so they could also keep a watch out at altitude. And after a while, the British and then later the Americans actually had planes that had radar, so they could spot the submarine on the surface and head towards it. Particularly at night, they had they did pretty well at taking a lot of them out, because they would use the radar to get right on top of them before the submarine knew. But the movie actually more or less depicts that. They don't try and make up some crazy attack story and have the subs going after all of the battleships and everything, because that was rare. They did try on occasion, but yeah, no, I like that. There were a few things that I thought were a bit weird, but and one of the things is the ranges. I am yet to actually see a World War II movie that has accurate ranges that the battles were fought at. I haven't seen a single one, or at least in terms of the naval one. But that's because most of them were fought at like 10 plus kilometers. So you wouldn't see the enemy at that point. I reckon you could do a good job of it.
Well, that is one of my areas of special interest, is the naval battles of World War II.
I actually did in terms of all the YouTube videos I've been in, the most watched one was on Dracofanel's channel, where I was on to talk about the chemistry of explosives used in World War I battleships and why the British and French ones tended to just explode when they weren't meant to. And the most common historical narrative was that it was because they were bypassing safety mechanisms and they're getting hit, and the fire would reach the magazine when it shouldn't have. But it turns out it was most likely because the explosives were shedding nitroglycerin dust everywhere. Yeah. So I think we need to make this happen. Now I want to see a Radium Raptor attacking U-boats with lasers. I agree. Either that, or we have the Radium Raptor riding a mosasaur with a laser on it, because every sea predator deserves a warm meal. That's a couple of references in one, I think.
Yeah, you were saying about the battleships and fighting at such a range that you didn't really see the enemy.
I mean, you would see them, but through telescopes and binoculars or the rangefinders. And as the war went on, the Allies in particular ended up using radar range finding, whereas particularly the Japanese are really far behind, and it showed. By the end of it, the Americans and British could basically hit them before they got within range, or if they did both get within range, then it was a bit lopsided.
Yeah, well, one of the first times that the battleship Iowa went out to help cover a landing, I forget the name of the island, but apparently the range was miscalculated somehow, and they overshot the island entirely and were hitting British landing craft coming in from the opposite side.
That doesn't surprise me. I'm trying to think of which battle. I can narrow it down to a few islands that probably was, or I don't think it would have been the Philippines. I'm trying to think, because there's probably one. Because I was tempted to say that it might have been Okinawa, but I'm pretty sure they didn't land on both sides. Or maybe they did. I have to check. But yeah, I know I've heard of that one. But a lot of that range finding, if you're doing remember, they're firing at land, you wouldn't use the radar for that. They would have been using maps and an optical rangefinder.
Yeah.
So human error was still an issue, because those optical rangefinders, basically, depending on which one you had, you would basically essentially have two separate images from lenses that are out to the side to basically give you these, basically take the human eyeballs and put them way out to the side for extra depth perception, and you would line up these images or these markers on the lenses until everything was clear, and you'd read out the range from that. So, but if they were using sort of map and reckoning where they thought their position were, I can see that happening. But still, the best self-own, or at least the biggest friendly fire incident of World War II, goes to the Japanese. I think it was the cruiser IJM. IJM? Yeah, Megami? I'll double check which one it was. Megami, that's it. Thank you. They launched a spread of torpedoes, and the Japanese had the longest running and fastest torpedoes of the war. They missed their target. It kept going, and they hit 5 of their own ships in one go, which the majority of times torpedoes were fired in World War II, you were lucky if you hit one ship. And they friendly fired 5 of their own ships. I think they hit several. I think it was a couple of tankers and destroyers, something. But yeah, that was a good self hit. Well, bad one. But yeah, that's something else. Anyway, there's
William Wakefield parallax rangefinders.
Yeah, well, there was there was at least 2 different types of rangefinder optical ones they were using. I don't know if they were both parallax. They could have been. I gotta double check on that, but it was just basic optics. Well, what we would say is basic, although if you're in the middle of a battle being fired at, it probably didn't seem that basic to you when your life depended on getting it perfect. And apparently some of them would give all of the users a raging headache. So they had to rotate the people fairly quickly. But yes. I'm just trying to go through.
It's also a matter of, what seemed basic in the 1940s, or what seemed, high tech in the 1940s seems pretty basic today.
We have this one from TP Seeker, also welcome. 50,000-year-old remains of a baby mammoth uncovered. In Siberia. That's some of those finds are fascinating, because we also get enough DNA from them. Could probably clone them in those cases, because those are young enough. The interesting thing is that the majority of these finds are actually of males, not females. And they took them a while to figure it out, or at least took them a while to narrow it down. But the most likely explanation for that is that mammoths live mainly in maternal herds, with the males being sort of independent and wandering around. And so the younger females were more likely to have experienced the older mammoths with a lot of experience near them that could help protect them from dangers of the environment, whereas the males didn't. So young males tended to get themselves into trouble, like falling into mud pits or in places where they could drown or get covered up by mud or ice a lot easier, which is why we have more males preserved. But they also found some baby. This is a few years ago, but they found some baby cave lions where they actually had the mother's milk still preserved in their stomach.
Yeah, that made me sad.
Yeah,
about that one.
It gave us a really good insight into their life, but I know it's the individual story is a bit sad. But I mean,
but the thing about the mammoths of the maternal herds and the males going off alone is still pretty much the way that African elephants live today.
Well, that's how that's why they actually suspected that's what was going on, because also. I think the Colombian mammoth is in between. So the current two, The current 2 species of elephants, you've got the Asian and African elephant, although the African elephant is actually likely 2 species. So you've got basically the savanna the
Yeah,
one you
the
find in the
savannah and
savannah,
the
and then a
forest
separate.
elephant.
But the reason is that if they actually separate them into two species, then the number in each species goes down, and they're critically endangered or close to it. They go down, they go up a category, and basically level of risk of extinction, which would mean that they need to do more for conservation. And there's a whole political thing about why they don't want to do that as well. And also some of these things just take time. But yeah, that's all scary. But the current two species, until they separate the others, are more distantly related to each other than they are to most mammoths, such as the Columbian, the woolly mammoth. Just to give an idea about that. And also, most mammoths were not woolly. You've obviously got the famous woolly mammoth, but the Columbian mammoth, which was one of the bigger ones, lived in climates that were too warm for an animal that size to have fur. They would have cooked themselves. So they would have just looked like giant elephants with long tusks, or at least closer to that. So there's that one. But yeah, I think that's another thing movies get wrong. They tend to put woolly mammoths in very warm climates, and you're like, not all of them, but some of the movies do that. Oh, well.
Yeah, but the whole arrangement of the males living alone is also something that evolution doesn't care about. Because with mammals, if you have one male surviving for every 10 females, the species will go on just fine.
That's actually why they reckon that humans have had, because there've been a few bottlenecks, and one of the bottlenecks was actually in male diversity. So there was a huge genetic diversity within human males, so modern Homo sapiens, but not in females at the same time. And they reckon it was because as we switched to agriculture and having started to have like towns and cities, then you would get scenarios where you would have one male in charge of like a couple of powerful males who could have a lot of wives. If you think about some of this, people like Pharaoh Ramses II is a really famous example because he lived long enough. He had like 200 odd kids from nearly as many wives, and you get all sorts of characters like that. I believe the man who's expected to have had the most kids was a sultan of some kind. I don't think Ottoman Empire. It might have been earlier than that. But yeah, there was. So yeah, it's not unusual at all. And yeah, got a couple of people with native atheist and Wahooligan comedy who've changed your name. But yeah, no, good to see more people joining. I know some coming and going, but that's good. Yeah, it has been a while. As I was saying earlier, I've kind of finished up. I've submitted PhD. I'm just waiting on it to finish up, so I finally have the time to be back. I will be doing other streams, and I will make a produced video in the near future. I will get around to that. I'm deciding on exactly what I'm going to do. But yeah,
well, if
see.
on your test you only have to be within a level of magnitude, you should be okay, right?
Yeah, hopefully I can get decent viewers on it. My last video, like scripted and properly edited video, not a live stream that I did for the channel, has been my most successful one, at least by pure views. So if I could get anywhere close to that again, I'll be very happy. But yeah, that was a few years ago now. Maybe nearly 3 years ago. A long time. At least 2 years since I did one. So yeah, I need to get back onto it. But all right. Have we got by the way, if there's more science questions, go for it. If not, then in a few minutes I might actually do the trivia questions while we still have some time. I don't want to let that go too long in case.
I didn't know you had trivia.
I did have a few trivia questions. They sort of Christmas related. I'm not going to keep score. I just made a nice little PowerPoint with a few trivia questions.
Sounds fun.
So, yep. We'll see. And I will remember this time to actually put a pause before I give the answer, like a long pause, because I know the delay on YouTube. So that way people can actually put answers in before I give it. There's only just under a dozen questions, so it's only so we don't have to rush it. I follow a channel, Ocean Conservation Namibia, which rescues seals from entanglements in nets, fishing lines, etc. They had a video And then the second part goes on to that, unfortunately, over 40% of them will not make their first year due to natural attrition before the risk of entanglement. Yeah, I think I know the channel you're talking about. And I love watching those videos when they actually save them. But yeah, there isn't part of the planet that humans haven't contaminated with something. And that is one of the reasons that Antarctica basically came under the control of scientists. So who goes to Antarctica or spends any long time, except for obviously, I mean, you can pay to do cruises, though they're not cheap. But in terms of actually staying in Antarctica, is more or less controlled by the scientific community. I remember listening to a talk from someone at the university from HPS, the History and Philosophy of Science, who was talking about how that came about. And part of it was because it's such a fragile ecosystem. And fortunately, because it's hard to get resources out of it, a lot of countries weren't going to make a huge amount of money, so it fell to the scientists to look after. And so now they sort of control who goes there and limit the reasons, so that way you don't have too many people going. And the people going for any extended period of time, if you're staying in one of those stations, you generally have a role to play, whether you're helping maintain the station or you're doing research or you're mapping, etc. And that's a good way to do it. And their argument that they made in this talk was that we should probably aim to do something like that with space, or at least the orbital space around Earth, if we don't want things going too crazy. And one of the examples they gave of when you don't have sufficient controls was at the time the giant reflective space, I'm just going to call it debris because that's the equivalent worth of what it was, that SpaceX put up. The big reflective thing that got in all of the astronomers' ways. I would be interested to see where that one goes. I've realized saying I'm a lot. I should stop.
Also about weapons up there.
Weapons are fairly restricted for the moment.
Yeah, there was one weapon system the U.S. came up with that I think basically they came to the same conclusion you were, that to get a laser up there that would have enough power to do anything to the ground wasn't worth it. So instead, their idea was just to basically have a cylinder full of these massive steel rods and just dropping them, just the force of them falling would blow a big crater wherever they landed.
What was the movie that did that? Had that as part of their plot. I think it was one of the G.I. Joes, I think. And I know Call of Duty Ghosts had it. There's a few references in pop culture. But yeah, essentially drop a solid object. However, those weapons are also a bit overrated because even still at terminal velocity, a solid rod is not going to do as much damage as you'd expect. You will end up doing more damage with just a low-flying plane dropping a bomb or launching a missile. And when you think about the cost of lifting a rod like that up into orbit, it'll still probably be low Earth orbit, although you could put it on the upper end of that. And again, that means you also need to aim the thing, which is not easy to do. And again, if you want something that's precise, you're probably not going to get that level of accuracy from that height, just because, disturbances in the atmosphere are going to veer it off course. But yeah, the issue is that you don't actually do as much damage. And this is why, although these things sound cool, they never actually really became a thing. This is why that despite how long guns have been around, the basic concept has changed very little of what a gun is since they first came about. We think about like hand cannons and actual cannons, so both some forms of guns. So, because I've had some people correct me, the gun is actually the artillery piece, and the one that the bang stick in your hands is a rifle or another one. And yeah, the biggest advancements when it came to handheld guns was rifling. And even then, whilst the guns have got better, the basic technology hasn't. And one of the reasons why is it's just the efficient way to do it.
Yeah, they've made them more accurate and more reliable, so they're less likely to blow up on you. But
yeah, or just they can pump the sky full of a lot more of the periodic table a lot faster than they used to. The guy who invented the Gatling gun, who was actually a doctor, can't remember
one of my favorite weapons.
Yeah, he was. He made the Gatling gun because he thought it would make armies smaller because you wouldn't need as many men to fire that many bullets. Not realizing that, yeah, that's not how the leaders of these armies were going to think. They're like, well, if I can have just as many men firing even more bullets, yeah.
Well, the
That
history
was,
of it I read also said that that he thought he could make war so horrible that nobody would ever agree to fight one again.
yeah, where have we
We
seen
can
that?
see that that didn't work out.
No, and yeah, I know it's just the story. You've got a lot of people like Alfred Nobel with dynamite was another one. He actually invented dynamite, but intended it for peaceful purposes like mining.
Hmm.
It's not where it ended up, and that was actually one of the reasons he came up with the Nobel Prize. Is he wanted to make sure his legacy had a lasting positive impact. So he wanted to encourage science for essentially good. And I would argue that at least the Nobel Prizes have kind of achieved that. And yeah, I mean, there's controversy about some of them, like obviously Rosalind Franklin not getting one, but the big, I would say it's almost a bigger controversy, kind of, that Nobel Prize was given out for lobotomies. Yeah, which is, yeah, there's a lot of weird trivia with some of these, but they are what they are. And I'm just trying to think out.
Well, I would
the
like to
great
be able
Emu
to.
Sorry, I'll go ahead and then I'll
Yeah,
respond to this
I
comment.
would like to be able to connect with one of the researchers in Antarctica, because then I could actually say that I've got at least one friend on every continent.
Yeah, that'd be
That's the
cool.
only one I'm missing.
Yeah, I don't know anyone on Antarctica. I know someone who has been, but I do not know anyone who's currently on there. So, and they only went down on one of those brief trips. So
Also, Samuelson wants to know if they can get a letter to his father. Samuelson's one of my tuxedo kitties. He claims he got his coat because his father's a penguin.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, I mean, I would happily take a trip down there, but again, I would probably go if I was part of like a scientific expedition. I don't know what use they'd have for me, my background, but I'm sure they would find some use. But yeah, if I went, I would have to do something useful on the way, just because I like the idea that you don't go to Antarctica unless you need to.
Yeah.
So,
well, like you say, it's it's expensive for them just to get enough food down there to feed you while you're there.
Yeah, but I would go and try and make it worth. But also the damage you do to the environment. Doesn't matter how careful you are, you will make some impact.
Yeah.
Obviously, you try and minimize it. But yeah. But anyway, sorry. This one here, the Great Emu War. Let's just say that machine guns did not work against emus, so we have to step it up somehow. But anyway, I have mentioned this trivia. We'll see how much we can get through, but I might start that. Otherwise, we're going to run out. So I'm going to reverse this for a bit, and it's going to be me asking the questions. So let me just set this up. I'm having a bit of an issue that when I try and click on menus, they disappear before I can click. So let's see if we can do this quickly. So you have to bear with me.
Making war so horrible no one would fight them is like trying to make something idiot-proof.
It just doesn't work. All right. I think this is working, but I can't now see stream. So I'm going to do. So I have to rearrange.
I see a big green box that says Christmas trivia.
Yep. There we go. This one's working. And I've got a few different types of questions. And hopefully this one, most of them are Christmas related, although I got one or two where that relation is a little loose. But we will try a few history ones. I've tried to make them not all too scientific, although if they've got a number in there, which is a year, I'll count that as science. But anyway, I'm curious to what people's answers will be. How many people know the same things? So, question first up, which of these came first? Candy canes, sliced bread, the teddy bear, or the end of the Spanish Inquisition? So yeah, which of these came first? Purple, do you know?
I'm kind of trying to sequence them. I'm not sure how long the Spanish Inquisition ran.
So I can see we've got 2 teddy bears, a candy cane. So some people are starting to answer.
No, I think sliced
Spanish.
bread was before the teddy bear. I'm not sure where the candy cane fell in either.
Well, because the chat's a little bit behind, I'll give you the answer. It is the candy cane is the earliest, going back at least until the early 1800s when it was proposed at a fair, though likely going back to the 17th or possibly 16th century. Sliced bread, 1928. The teddy bear, the early 1900s, I believe 1902. It came about after, as basically a plushie that came out after Teddy Roosevelt, so the US president. And the Spanish Inquisition didn't finish until the mid 1800s. So it was actually still running during the Napoleonic era. Basically the semi-exiled government tried to stop it, and then when the king got his power back, he reinstated it. They used it basically as a proto-secret service. So yeah, candy cane.
Yeah,
is our winner there. It's the oldest of those. Yeah, teddy bears and sliced bread surprised me. I thought they'd be older, but no, they're both 1900s.
So the Spanish Inquisition ran almost until the American Civil War.
Pretty much. I have to check the exact year. I think it was 1830s, though possibly later. I think 1838 maybe. But anyway, this one is not. This is one of the few that is not really Christmas related, but I've used this one before and I love it. So who said we can always rely on the Americans to do the right thing once they have tried everything else? And so
I don't really know, but I'm going to guess this was some British Prime Minister.
Yep, it was spot on. Somebody in the chat already got it. Some people know this one. That one was Winston Churchill. I'm pretty sure he said it during World War II. I like that one. That's why I kept that one in. Here we go. So here's just pure Christmas trivia. Who wrote The Night Before Christmas? And just to specify, because there's a slight bit of controversy, I'm asking for who is it normally attributed to. So if you pick up one of the modern illustrated books of it, who is the author on it?
Yep.
It was The Night Before Christmas.
I'm drawing a blank. I can't even remember who the author. It's usually.
Yeah, I had to look this one up. I couldn't remember off the top of my head, but I do remember reading this one with family a lot. And yes, one of my favorite renditions was hearing it in Arabic. My dad read it out and he decided to translate it for us. I like that one. But no, a few people in the chat have it. Is Clement C. Moore, or Clement Clark Moore it's normally attributed to him, although apparently there is some people who dispute that. But I'll go for that one. This one here, because I said if you hadn't spotted earlier from this stream, I do like my my history, particularly the World Wars. Although I'll go back earlier than that. I just generally don't do European medieval history much, and by much I mean I have less of an interest, but I still know a few random facts. And so here's the 1914 Christmas truce occurred primarily between the soldiers of which two countries? And if you want to narrow it down, these are also the two countries whose biggest battle during this truce was a soccer match.
Yep. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know this one. I just let the people in the chat make their guesses.
And some people are pretty quick with this one.
Yep.
Yeah, it was Germany and the UK, the United Kingdom. Well, technically the German Empire, which I didn't see anyone put, although Germany is obviously, we all know what you mean. However, the thing is, if I'd asked for what countries were involved, you'd be listing pretty much all of them, because there were some truces, at least to some scale, between the Germans, Austro-Hungarians, the Russians, the Belgium. The Belgians did it as well. The French, although the French and the Germans didn't have as much between them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, even right before the war, the British Navy was doing drills with the Kriegsmarine, and they were wishing each other good luck and waving goodbye to each other and exchanging gifts, within a few days of the war starting. So yeah, but it only occurred in 1914 because all the, or at least on any large scale, because all the generals didn't like the fact that their soldiers stopped fighting for a few days, because some of these truces went till New Year's Eve. But yeah.
Well, yeah, because who wants to kill people on a holiday?
Do you want me to start
that will
listing?
get you put on Santa's naughty list.
Which, I mean, next question coming up, but yeah, I could make you a very long list. It just seems to be a thing where armies like attacking each other. Yeah. But here we go. This one here is a true or false. Santa's red suit originated with Coca-Cola.
Yeah, I think that's a little more complicated than actually true or false here, but
I mean, maybe.
I think it's mostly true, but I think that there may have been like versions of Santa from certain countries that were red.
Yeah, well, here's my hint then, which will probably give away the answer, is I have been very careful with my wording on this one. Santa's red suit originated with Coca-Cola, which is in fact false, as most people correctly got. They helped popularize it, which Hollyhock has correctly pointed out, but it does not originate with him. Even earlier people in the early 1900s, some of the cartoonists who did multiple colors, red still started becoming more popular before Coca-Cola got it, but they just helped make it more common. In fact, some of the early portraits of Saint Nick have him in so Saint Nicholas have him in red and white because that was the color of the clergy at the time. So it goes pretty much all the way back to the beginning, which is why I was careful with the wording. I didn't say that, which is why I didn't use popularized with originated, because sorry. In terms of native atheist comment about paid 50% chance of being right, like, yeah, that's why I like true. I like true or false. And so, yeah, there were multiple colors before Coke, including red. Oh, well. Sorry,
yeah,
Purple,
most of the lore that people know about Santa Claus and his reindeer was done by American marketing.
Yes, and we already had Clement Seymour, and I do have another question on his reindeer, but it's relatively recent that we get those views on it, which it's like anything, changes over time.
Yeah.
But talking about reindeer, before I get to the other one that's specifically about Santa's reindeer, roughly, and I will emphasize roughly, we've got multiple choice, when did the last common ancestor of humans and reindeer live? So I realized I capitalized reindeer where I shouldn't have. When? 10 million years ago, 100 million years, 200 million years, or 500 million years? And also, just to go back a second with some of the other comments while the stream has a chance to catch up. Yeah, I would love to see other colors for Santa. The blue sounds cool.
Well, the Nordic Father Christmas was usually done in a green suit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things with Father Christmas, a lot of people say it originates with Saint Nick, but it's obviously, and I think you hinted at it right at the beginning with that question, it's a lot more complicated than that. It's you've got multiple origins for what we would now consider the modern idea of Santa, and so it's like multiple cultural understandings of it and coming together over time, and also adapting over time into what we have as that one.
Yeah.
Also, I am surprised. We have a couple of people got it right. The answer for this one is in fact 100 million years, which puts you in the early Cretaceous.
Oh.
Yeah. Which, if we're going back to talking about bad movies, Jurassic Park should have been called Cretaceous Park, because most of the animals they have in there are from the Cretaceous, not the Jurassic.
Yeah.
Although here's a random question that I want, if we have time after this little trivia, how many dinosaurs can people name from the Triassic? Because there's only one I can routinely name, although I've been trying to learn more. But yeah, that's a separate
Well, there
one.
was Paul and Bert and Margaret.
I mean, you knew some of them, so.
No, that was a little before my time.
Oh yeah, I mean, Ceratops in well, Triceratops, yes.
Yeah.
Your Cretaceous, mainly around Hill Creek.
Yeah.
Hill Creek Formation. Yeah. Oh well, Jim.
I know. Technically, I'm descended from a Torosaurus, but people know what a Triceratops is, so it's kind of shorthand.
No, but Torosaurus is pretty cool. I like learning about the not so common ones that were still pretty impressive. Although I learned recently there was a relative, it might be distantly related, but still a relative of one of the biggest raptors, Giganotosaurus, the relative of Giganotosaurus. I can't remember the name of this dinosaur. They have tracks of it running along. They have tracks of a sauropod running at great speed. Then this raptor appears next to it. We're talking something that is, it's not as big as a T-Rex, but it's on that order of size. And it runs alongside it, and the tracks disappear, and the sauropod ends up putting a lot of weight on its right side and starts running a bit erratically. Then the tracks appear next to it again, before they both run off together. And it's evidence that this dinosaur, the giant dinosaur they thought was too big to actually jump, actually jumped on one of the big sauropods and had a go at it while it was running.
Yeah, I know the trackway you're referring to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but that was cool. Anyway, next question. Let's see. Oh, it goes back. Did I double this one? I hope I didn't double that one up. Oh, okay. Which of these was one of the original reindeer to pull Santa's sleigh? We got Rudolph, Lancer, Donder, and Lupin. Which one of these was one of the original reindeer?
Okay,
and by original, I am also referring to those listed in 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, or as it was originally named, A Visit from Saint Nick.
Yeah. Okay, this one I know.
Yeah. You want to give the answer? Remember, there's a delay in the stream. I'll have heard the question.
That Donder was the only one here mentioned in the poem.
Yep, Donder was, and I believe it comes from the Dutch word for thunder, which is actually a pretty cool name.
Yeah, most of the chat got it.
Battleship. Thunder.
Yeah, my fault.
But yeah, no, Rudolph came a lot later, and the other two just aren't names ever there. They just sounded a bit close to it. That's why I picked them. But yeah, most people got that. As I said, these are nice and easy. This one might take a bit more, or might not get as much agreement on this one. But which of these is the highest grossing Christmas movie of all time? Got A, The Grinch, the 2018 version, not Dr. Seuss's Grinch, or The Grinch Stole Christmas. We got Die Hard, which I am considering a Christmas movie, and you can disagree with me, but you would be wrong. We got The Polar Express, which is actually from my childhood, technically. And we've got Home Alone. I'm referring to the first one, not the second one. 1990.
So also the first Die Hard.
Because I'm not sure. I don't know if would you consider the others Christmas movies? The other Die Hards? Don't think so. I definitely would consider the first one a Christmas movie. It's one of my favorite Christmas movies because it has guns in it. No, actually, I really did enjoy The Polar Express because I watched that when I was actually young enough to be a kid. Tom
Hanks. I have never seen Die Hard, but during the
marathon
last year, I trolled Claire by arguing against it being a Christmas movie anyway, just from all the parodies of it I've seen.
Devil's advocate. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to actually upset me if you argue either way, but it's like pineapple on pizza. It's just fun to have that argument. The disagreement is just hilarious because I will die on the hill that pineapple does not belong on pizza.
Yeah, well,
and I love making a nice little argument over it. But yeah, what one do you think it is, Perps?
of those four, it was either Die Hard or Home Alone. I'm gonna say probably Die Hard.
Okay. Unfortunate to say, this is the first. Not a single person got this one right that I can see. There is, in fact, 2018, The Grinch, which was over $500 million.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't think that
I think it
performed
was
that well in the theater.
Yeah, I did look it up before this, and that's currently listed as number one. Apparently. But then again, it also has the advantage that there's a much more recent film, and with inflation and things, where some of these older ones came out when you would earn less money because
Yeah.
money was just
Well,
worthless.
also just the price of a theater ticket in that year.
Yeah, and I think that that's also... So I don't know what the inflation adjusted... Yeah, I don't actually know how it would go if you inflation adjusted it. But yeah, that one surprised me. I was actually expecting it to be one like Die Hard because it's a film for adults. You would have seen more of it. Or Home Alone didn't actually occur to me, but then when I saw it, I'm like, that has to be. But both Die Hard and Home Alone are up there. I think Home Alone was like 3 or 4 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Polar Express was up there. It's, I think, it's definitely top 10. I think it might be top 5. Which also surprised me because that was a cartoon, as I said, from when I was younger. I didn't think... Like, I knew it was popular, but I didn't realize it was one of the top.
Yeah, I didn't think the Polar Express would have rated that high either.
But yeah, it was up there. I mean, I said I enjoyed it as a movie. I did actually see it as an adult. Not obviously, it could have been a few years ago, and I still enjoyed it. But the in terms of Hollyhock's question, no, I haven't actually seen it. I was wondering if it was a movie I've seen because a lot of those top... I looked up a list of them, and there was a bunch that you know of them, you've heard of them.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't watch them. They're just not my films. I tend not to also do rom-coms as well, which a bunch of the top ones are, because a lot of Christmas movies are essentially rom-coms or at least romantic films. That's not generally sort of film I'll watch.
Yeah. Well,
generally.
Rom-coms, if you actually look at most rom-coms, usually if they occurred in real life, it would be a stalker story. There would be a restraining order involved.
There's a lot of movies, and even like the popular Christmas song, because I can't get it out of my head, but you know, it's cold outside. Basically, she's trying to find excuses to leave, and the guy's going to be like, "No, stay," and I'm just like,
yeah.
Depending on how the tone between whoever's singing it does it, I'm like, that's... Oh well. But then again, just go watch some of the older James Bonds. They're... Yeah, you wouldn't put that in a modern film. Particularly some of the Sean Connery ones, and some of the Roger Moore ones are weird because he's just too old. There's one of them where he basically says, "No, I'll just go buy you an ice cream." And you're just sitting there going, "Oh." Anyway, that's for another time. But anyway, this one is not a Christmas question, but I just love this one, which probably might give it away. But because this was... because I'm not going to give the year for a good reason. But how was the first airmail delivered in the US? So we got either a plane, a hot air balloon, which it's interesting on how that would mechanically work, or an airship, so something like a blimp or a Zeppelin, or D, a train.
Yeah, unless there's some, kind of bending of the definition, I don't think train should be a valid answer in this category.
Yeah, I can understand that. And most people in the chat can actually see where this is going. The correct answer is actually, in fact, D, because the airmail was actually a service setup, and they were going to use balloons. And then the weather went bad on them, and they couldn't actually deliver. The balloons got blown back. They lost some of the mail, so they ended up having to put it on a train to get it to their destination. So basically, they set it up to be this whole cool new mail delivery system. And then even once they got it going, there was an issue with a lot of pilot deaths because they would make them fly no matter what the weather was. And in an early plane where most of it was made of wooden canvas, that wasn't generally a good idea. But the correct answer on this one is D. The first airmail in the US was delivered by train. So.
Well, and especially because those wooden canvas biplanes did not have a windshield or a canopy cover.
Nope.
The cockpits were generally just open, so the pilot was exposed to whatever weather was happening.
Yeah, I was recently traveling around. Went to a couple places in Australia because I finally submitted, so I had a mini holiday. And one of the things I got to see was one of the world's 2 remaining Vickers Vimis, which were developed as bombers for World War One, but they didn't produce them in time to actually see service. So a lot of them, because they were large and had for the time very reliable engines, they converted them into some of the early cargo and passenger planes. First plane to fly across the Atlantic, and also first plane to make the trip from India to Australia, which is why there is one of them and one of the only 2 left in Australia. The other, I believe, is the one that crossed the Atlantic, or at least from that group. But yeah, they and I was looking at that, and you're just like, wait, this was meant to be a passenger plane. I mean, I would have loved to have flown in one. It'd be cool, but I'd rather it not go over the ocean, because in those days you kind of wanted to know you weren't going to crash in the middle of the ocean. Although, as I said, the Vickers Vimis were more reliable for the time. But yeah, the number of people that disappeared in those eras just because the plane couldn't rely on it, and the radio in them probably wasn't the longest range. So, but anyway, although as Liam has pointed out, yes, they had nice woolly scarves. They did dress up really, really well. See the pictures from that era.
Yeah, but
I swear we need modern pilots to dress that. The leather caps of the goggles. I want to bring that back. I actually, here's another little bit of trivia while we're doing trivia. The reason that modern pilots wear very naval-inspired uniforms is because one of the first commercial airliners in the US, the first one that did this trend, was actually in the period where, the Prohibition era, where a lot of people in the US were flying to Cuba to get cigars and to drink. And so the air services played up that Caribbean thing about we're flying you out, and a lot of them were seaplanes, so they dressed the pilots up as sea captains, and that trend just caught on, and now they all have it. But that is not the original way that they used to, or they started. So yeah, I want the leather caps. I want to see a pilot get in with a leather cap, the goggles, and a scarf. Although if you do that in Australia, you'll probably die of heat stroke if you're not careful. But that's a separate issue. Couldn't put air conditioning on. Anyway, here's another one, and yeah, not really a Christmas question, but we were talking about it earlier, so it is related. Which of these animals is which animal is closest in size to a velociraptor? A turkey, B, a cow, C, an elephant, or D, a manatee? Few people are very quick on this one. They're putting in basically, I think, as soon as the stream.
Yeah, the manatee reminds me that in the 70s, somebody had done a reconstruction. I forget exactly which species of raptor it was, but claiming that it was a semi-aquatic swamp dweller, so that all of its hands and feet were webbed for swimming.
Some of the early reconstructions of dinosaurs were pretty terrible, and it's because the guy who came out who termed the phrase "dinosaur terrible lizard" was Richard Owen, who had a weird creationism view, where basically he thought the creator iterated on his designs and would constantly improve them. So in his worldview, these extinct dinosaurs could not be better than modern animals. So to him, they had to be slow, sluggish beasts. And it wasn't until, and he actually covered up a lot of evidence that would have hinted that dinosaurs were a lot more active, and probably, at least the raptors behaved a lot more like birds than we thought. The point where did he get dismissed eventually? I can't remember, but there's a whole thing where he actually suppressed a lot of and basically derailed a lot of good scientific research into early dinosaurs because he had his view. Now, he was very good at what he did, but unfortunately he had some views that that also slowed certain things. It's an interesting one. And
yeah, unfortunately, religious bias has held back a lot of fields of science.
But even still, I think even for the time, his views weren't as uncommon as they are now, but they're still a bit odd. But anyway, the answer to this one
Should be a
is in
turkey.
fact, is A, and that's what I love. My favorite description now that I use to describe a velociraptor is a spicy turkey, because they were feathered and they're about the size of a turkey, but they had a larger skull and had teeth. So essentially, a turkey that could bite. If Jurassic Park had actual velociraptors in it, which neither the book nor the movies actually does, they just call them velociraptors because they thought that would have the widest name appeal, which is a weird way to do it. I don't think it would have mattered what they called them. The movie, the first one was really good, and I think whatever name they used would become popular. But no, they were tiny. And so anyone in that film, even the kids, could have beaten a velociraptor in a fight. You just kick it.
Yeah.
Though I think what they used was maybe a Deinonychus. I've heard Utahraptor, but I think there was another one that's probably more accurate. But there was also controversy at the time when they were doing the movies or writing the books, can't remember which one, where one scientist or someone conflated two of the dinosaurs that were on opposite continents. One was in Europe, one was in the Americas, I believe. And one of the scientists said they were the same species, despite the fact being less than half, one being significantly smaller than the other one. And so the names also got a bit confused. But the ones in the movie are meant to be larger raptors. And they actually changed the door handles so they could do the scene where they open the door, because they tried to look at the bone connections. Said the first one for the time was actually fairly accurate if you ignore the fact that they're not velociraptors, there's something else. And they tried to figure out whether they could do a turning motion. It turns out they couldn't. So they replaced all of the doors on the set with the handles so that they could have them opened, which is a little odd bit of information I found out. Like, that's a weird thing to change for the movie. But
yeah, most of the people I've heard commenting on them say that they were probably a Deinonychus or something closely related.
Yeah, and they didn't yet know they had feathers. The only thing that they would have known at the time is that their hands couldn't do this. They could, well, they could, but they wouldn't have ever held them there. They were actually rotated to the side. So if you're ever doing a dinosaur impression, particularly a T-Rex, if you do T-Rex, you got to do it with your hands like this, but on like this, and then you walk around with them in nice and close, because it was actually those two fingers that they had left. Well, the others merged into them, but those were the, if you're gonna do dinosaur impressions, you got to do it correct. It's my.
Well, one of the really interesting points about Jurassic Park was it was at least the first popular movie, if not the first one, to show the dinosaurs as actually having problem-solving intelligence.
Yeah, which, look, it's an inference, but it's a really nice inference. And remembering that birds are raptorine dinosaurs, though the term raptor is still a bit loose, and it depends on classification. And that is not my area of expertise. I just have a sort of fascination in it. But it is quite likely that a lot of these other dinosaurs, which should have been in that same overall group, would have likely had a lot of intelligence. Exactly how much and what sort of problem solving is a bit hard. But it looks like ones like Oviraptor, which the name means egg plunderer, or sort of egg thief, but plunderer is more accurate, which is what the raptor means, is plunderer, which actually the reason they thought it originally was plundering eggs, hence the name, was because it was found close to eggs, but turns out they were sitting on them.
Yep.
They were actually, so Velociraptor would have sat on eggs like a chicken. And that was actually one of the reasons the arms had so many feathers on them. And that evolved before the ability to fly. Though there is some argument now in the literature as to whether Velociraptor could have flown. Oviraptor, sorry, yeah.
Maybe the only thing I would think it would be too heavy for powered flight, really.
It was more a question of could it do like a short range, almost like a turkey flight. So not actually get anywhere. Probably wouldn't have need to. It probably could have broken its fall a little bit, but I don't know enough about the anatomy to make a call. And turns out dinosaurs can jump a lot better than we thought. So they're quite strong. They beat pretty much anything else alive today that was a similar size, unless you get to the really, really small end. Though it's obviously more complicated. But anyway, I'll try and finish out the last questions very quickly, and then hand on to the next person. Then I'll come back for the end. But got this one here. During the Winter War, what did damn it, I know how to say the first name, but my mental blanks. But what did Molotov, so the Soviet's foreign minister, say the Soviet bombing raids were actually delivering to the Finns? So this is during the Winter War in 1940. So, 39, 40, I think. 39 or 40, 41. Sorry. Military supplies, clothing, food, or presents. And while people think about what the answer actual one is, the plane, yes, I have there, is not actually a Soviet plane. That is a Finnish plane. It's actually a Bristol Blenheim, so so it'll be a British-made plane. And yes, that is a Finnish plane with swastikas on it. However, the Finnish Air Force actually adopted swastikas as their Air Force symbol in 1918. So it actually predated the Nazi symbols, despite the fact they were getting supplies from the Nazis. And I believe they're the only military left in the world that actually still uses the swastika as a symbol. Because again, it had nothing to do with the particular toothbrush mustache man that YouTube doesn't tend to like people mentioning. So yeah. And yeah,
I wasn't aware they were still using it, actually.
Yes, and as some people were, sorry, perhaps?
I wasn't aware that the Finnish military was still using it.
I'm not sure if they removed it, it would have been really recently, but I believe at least some branches of the Air Force still do. Because as I said, it was a tradition they held separate to what it has now generally become associated with, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, that's what, and so the plane there, yeah, I just thought it was an interesting thing. Yeah, most people got it. It is in fact C. I would have loved the answer to have been presents, but yeah, it's where Molotov cocktails come from. Yep. It was they were returning cocktails to them. But yeah, those are the trivia questions. Let me just post that one down, which brings us pretty much to the end. I've got 2 more minutes left. So in that time, if there's any last questions or points. Sorry, just to make that one clear. Basically, the Finns named the firebombs Molotov cocktails because they were giving cocktails back to the Russians, back to Molotov. So they're named after the foreign minister.
Yeah, that's what Atheist Carpenter was saying. Was that he said it was bread, and hence the Finnish were sending back cocktails.
Yeah. Yeah. Vyacheslav Molotov. Yeah.
I used to have a cat I named Molotov. Because his front half was black, literally to where his waist would be. And beyond that, he was pure white. Like he had just had a firebomb just set off in his face. That's as far as it covered.
There are some cool names out there for pets. That's a nice one.
Yep.
Yeah. When it's
I like my history with me right now is Sammy San.
Nice. And it looks like there's been a couple of people maybe in the background or just joining now, but we're pretty much at 8 p.m. So actually, Purple, do you have the link? If not,
yep.
Well,
anybody who came here through the playlist, it will advance them in the link. But I will get the link directly from Mages.
And while you do that, I am going to pop the link in the chat. Now that I've done that, I can probably pin. There we go. So I've just pinned the link. If I've got the right one there.
Oh, okay. I was just pulling it up, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I guess my internet was a bit faster. I got it out quickly.
Probably your fingers were a bit faster. I'm always a little slow on these things.
Oh, I've got the setup for being able to do multiple of these at the same time because I was using the playlist. all I did was scroll down. It was already the next one under.
Okay, well, there's Mate says he's on standby, so ready to start at any moment here.
In which case, because I'm already 1 minute over, I'm going to end this one here. Thank you everyone for coming.
Okay.
Hopefully that you enjoyed that. It was a good part of the stream. I'll definitely be in the background for the next stream.
Yep, we had some fun with that.
Yeah, everyone head on over to Garden Happens. We'll have the next one in the series, the last of all of the essentially guest streams, and then Purple will finish it up. And I'll definitely be back for that. I'll be around Purple, even if I'm just hiding in the background. So yeah. Anyway, just because a few people were putting it in, it is 8 p.m. where I am. Hopefully it's not too late, or at least it's a good time everywhere else.
Well, but yeah, it's 3 a.m. my local time.
So you'll be finishing this at
5 a.m.
ungodly hour.
Final.
But yes, remember, I've been almost a doctor, or at least for now, and keep being like a proton and stay positive. I'll see you all next time.
Okay. Bye-bye.